what's good, everybody? My name is Hoover, and we're playing a panel review of Warframe. We have got Thor with us,
Hello.
and old Grandpa Joe.
Hello. So, we're looking at doing the Warframe review tonight, and I gotta say, after playing it for a long time, this is definitely not a new game for any of us here in this channel.
Nope.
I gotta say, in its current incarnation, I do have to think it's a good game. I think the immersion.
Would you say that it's worth doing a panel review of?
Yes. I'm thinking the immersion of it is not particularly well done. I mean, just as far as like sucking you into the game and making you believe that you're actually part of the game, like you're affecting the world that you're in. But I do think that it is a quality game. If nothing else, it's just a badass game for making you get in there and feel like you're some kind of super powered ninja that can just like run in and just clear a room full of bad guys with no problem. So I think, as far as the immersion goes, I think they could do a little bit better job on it. But I do think it's definitely a fun game. It's not a game that you're going to feel like you're really part of it. But it's definitely going to be a game that you have fun doing it and can kind of feel vested in what you're doing.
See, I gotta disagree with you a little bit there. I mean, obviously your opinion is your opinion, but I appreciate, and it may just be that I spend a lot of time in Photoshop and doing this kind of thing, but for me the immersion is pretty deep because all of the menus past the point of logging into the game, I mean, you sit down to pick out your missions and you're looking at a star map that you've activated out of the control panel of your ship. Like, so let's even start there. You start out in your ship, right? And you're deploying yourself like off onto these missions, and everywhere that you go on your ship from customizing your Tenno, which is what you play as in the game, is a basically super powered ninja called a Tenno. You have a console for that where you go and you fix these things and you pick out what you want. You go to a star map on your ship and you choose where you're going to deploy your ship. You go to your comms and communicate with the trader to even buy things in the game. So for me, I can appreciate that everything in the world of Warframe happens inside the world of Warframe. At no point am I pulled out into some UI that's like completely separate from this universe. Aside from, you hit the escape, but you still even have your Tenno just kind of like he pulls back and he holds out his hand. Or she holds out his hand, because there are male and female, and sort of this display pops in front of you. So even that feels like that's part of your own personal UI that just is built into maybe your visor or something.
Yeah, I gotta give them props for that. I mean, there are some things that they do that I think are particularly well, but this may not be a particularly good example. But like if you go through in World of Warcraft and you depopulate an area of mobs, that area is like very clearly depopulated. They'll respawn eventually, but like when we were banging our face on that mission earlier tonight, you would do the mission and you would go right back into it, and it'd be like nothing happened, like you had never been there before.
That's valid, and it's in my opinion, it's sort of a weakness and a strength, and we can get into that in a little bit. But I think. Just in general, they build a pretty they build a pretty sexy world in general. It's you're right. You may not see necessarily an impact on it the way you might see it in other games, but they do a pretty good job of making everything feel like it belongs in that universe.
Well, there's nothing really that can pull you out. I mean, even the voice acting is totally on par. I mean, when the Lotus talks to us, it feels like she's some distant AI telling us what needs to be done, even though she's kind of annoying at times. And the little Ortis guy, just in your ship, how he's kind of corrupted, that adds just a whole nother level of immersion and character to just your ship. And the thing, it overall, just the quality of everything, all the textures are super smooth. Everything looks right. Everything feels like it could take place in this universe. Nothing feels out of place because it's such a slick and streamlined design overall.
It's definitely designed with the universe in mind. I won't name names, but I've played plenty of games where I'm going through a tutorial and there's some disembodied voice that has nothing to do with the universe that is telling me how to do things. And from the get-go with this game, you're basically pulled out of stasis, and you're being spoken to by this voice. You don't understand who she is, but you know she has a place somewhere in the universe, and she's telling you how to survive. You're in danger, and their tutorial is like, kill or be killed, and what a great way to start a game.
I think strengths and weaknesses portion of what we should talk about in the interview, and I kind of disagree with you guys on some of this to some extent. One of the things when I look for in a game is the ease of entry into a game, like how well it puts you into the world and teaches you how to play it. There are some games that just take an approach where they just dump you into the world and say fuck you and then just let you do your thing. And I gotta say that Warframe does a pretty good job of getting you into the basics of the game. Meaning, it dumps you in there, shows you how to stick your sword in bad guys' faces, and it does a pretty good job on that. On that front, I gotta say Warframe is a fantastic game for getting you into the basic portion of the game. But if you get to any of the deeper stuff, like doing mods, trying to figure out what quest you're supposed to be on, or any of that sort of stuff, I think it just kind of falls flat on its face. It really does not do a good job of teaching you the higher aspects of the game. And if all you're looking for is just to get in someplace and mindlessly slaughter a bunch of drones, Warframe's good for that. But it's also really great for being able to customize your character to play the way you want to play it. But they don't ever show you how to do that. You just gotta kind of learn it. They give you like a brief, 30-second description of it, and then they just kind of say, have fun. When we first played this, it took me 2 months before I figured out that you could really even improve the little power cards you get. I had no idea that was just a thing you could do.
And I gotta agree with you there. That once you get into the deeper, you want to level up your frames, or you want to get different weapons leveled up and use the card system that they have, it gets very complicated. I mean, I still have probably 30 cards that I have no idea what they do, just because nothing's ever shown me what it does, or if I put that card on my gun, I don't notice a direct impact. But you could go online and look up all these guides and really micromanage everything about your character, but the game doesn't do a good job of showing you how to do that or what builds are effective with which frames. You can have whatever weapon you want on whatever frame you want, but you don't know what's going to be good. It all really depends on your playstyle, but it doesn't teach you what's effective and what's not. So you spend a lot of time just kind of mixing and matching, and I hope this works. So then you jump into a mission and then you die because you don't have enough vitality points or something. And it's just trial and error, and that can get kind of frustrating when you just have to basically just learn the hard way. It's just here you go, enjoy.
So you guys are making some super solid points, and to me, there's something to be appreciated about some mystery being left to a game and it not telling you verbatim, you need to do this so that you can do this. I played World of Warcraft back in the day whenever there weren't guides all over the internet on how to spec your character, and everybody spec'd their character however they really wanted. And you get that in this game for sure with this card system. There's resources and you can min-max your character, sure, but there's still sort of an aspect of I like this part of this frame and I'm gonna really boost it. But yeah, past your initial tutorial and intro of the game, it's really just self-discovery. You either look up guides on Google or you just figure it out. There was nothing about cards. There was nothing about like the leveling process that I recall that was anything that was really
There was
like
something, it just wasn't very substantial.
yeah, it might have been like just a little pop up, and you know we've been playing this for what, over a year and a half now
At
before
least.
we've really gotten to this.
We kind of dropped off, but we've come back and we're starting to play it again.
We took some time off, but you know we've been playing this over the course of a year and a half, and I don't recall any significant process where it was like, hey, you should do this and you should do this, and when you put these things together, this is where you really excel. And like we do random missions, and I run across people that are just their warframes are just so much better than mine. And I don't know, I've got 200 hours in this game and I don't know how they're doing so much better than me, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty much it. They don't do a very good job of explaining the additional features to the game.
Right, and I think one of the issues is you can't just get a frame. I mean, yeah, you can go and buy a frame with their platinum points, but in order to get some of the other frames, you have to do specific missions, and some of those missions are really hard. So if you don't have like the right frames in your inventory to start off with, you could totally be screwed out of getting those other ones unless you team up with another group of people, which if you don't have a group of friends to play this game with, it's really not single player friendly. You want to group up with people, and usually people are pretty cool about having other people, and there's a few jerks, but for the most part it's safe to just random queue with other people.
I was to say, like with almost any other multiplayer game that has groups, you're kind of at the mercy of the quality of the pugs that you get. And that can be everything from some guy that just basically one-shots everything for you, or you just get the people that just can't stop falling off the map 40 times. It's just a total crapshoot, which, that's, to be fair, that's not I'm not dinging Warframe for that. That's just the nature of the game.
Right. And I feel like that is actually a strength of the game, in my opinion, that things are leveled appropriately and they scale appropriately depending on like what you have available to you. You don't see too many people that are like max level warframes with all the right cards and all the good weapons and stuff like that on Earth, the initial planet that you get. You know what I mean? Yeah, they'll drop in from time to time because they got a thing that they got to pick up. But in general, the game does a really good job of like, I just started, I'm going to start on this planet, and it's really low level, and the rewards and incentives don't really carry on once you've managed to pick up 6 different frames and 6 different primary weapons, secondary weapons, melee weapons. And you're like, you know, you're really looking at end game kind of content. There's no reason to go back into that space and really ruin the experience for new players. They do.
It does.
I don't know if that was
an
an intention. It does happen. It does happen from time to time. You drop into a map and all of a sudden, like, like 30 seconds later, they're at the end of the map and everything is dead, and you're like, well, I just started.
Those are usually the people that I found that are like harvesting a particular type of material that's only found on some of the lower level planets. Why they don't just queue themselves by themselves, I don't know. But I mean, to go back on a more slightly, I don't think we've necessarily been negative so far, but to go on a more slightly positive note, I definitely think one of Warframe's strengths, like you guys were mentioning earlier, was the quality of the levels, the textures, I love the tile set that they have in the game. I thought that was one of the greatest things ever put into a game, and I wish more games would do that, because, you know, a lot of games suffer from, if you played the same level 50 times, like cough cough Dragons Reborn Karazhan, it just kind of gets old. And the way that, you know, the tile sets will have, like, you'll see the same type of room over and over again, but it's always mixed matching, which is one of the things I really loved about Diablo 2 back in, you know, what, 96, was that every time you played Diablo, the level was different. You couldn't just be like, oh, well, there's that tree, I know there's going to be loot over here. And just
there's
the quality of the tiles, the quality of the textures, yet the game runs really well. On crappy computers, it's playable.
I can play this game on my laptop. Like, sure, I have to turn down a few settings and don't get all the flashy graphics and like motion blur and whatnot, but I can still run it at medium to high settings on my laptop, and it's not a good laptop.
So yeah, it's definitely a beautiful game. But you're right that like the tile system and the procedurally generated map, it does it so well. There's other games, and there's games that have just come out that are granted still good games, but you can see like there's this room, and then there's a long hallway, and then there's another room, and it's like you can really tell. But once you really dive into Warframe, it's kind of like, I mean, I guess if you really scrutinize it, you could probably see that like the layout of the ship is a little wonky, and it really doesn't make any sense. But I mean, when you're just like jamming through, and you're met with like 100 different enemies that you're trying to just plow through and get your mission done and whatnot. It feels super organic. They do such a good job with making it feel like a real environment that you've dropped into. You're really infiltrating a Grenier or like a Grenier ship, and you're trying to get through it and get your, like your intel or something like that and pull out.
That's the thing about this game is, this game is free to play, and the level of detail on these textures and these maps and all of these ships, and even the freaking looking outside the cockpit of just your little spaceship, looking off into space at whatever star you're currently parked next to, it's super detailed. Like everything, they did not spare any expense on the graphical detail of this game simply because it's free to play. Everything about this game looks good. Every environment you go to looks unique and different and is super cool and detailed, and just probably one of the most immersive and best looking environments I've ever seen in a video game. And this game is free.
Yeah,
That blows my mind. Just the level of work.
I don't mean to take what you're saying and stop what you're saying, but just as an example,
how dare you?
When you're when you're in a group with other players, you can see their ships sitting outside of yours.
And let's be honest here, the best thing about this game is being able to wiggle your ship around on the loading screen.
Yeah, when you're loading into a level, you can tap on your keyboard and make your ship wobble around and move, and other players can see you move your ship around, and it's just the coolest, funnest, neatest feature ever. It's the best. This game is great.
To use this as a segue into one of the other sections I want to talk about, I also have to say that I don't think the tile set necessarily is one of its greatest weaknesses, but one of the changes they made in the interim between when we played last and when we're playing now, I think kind of negates that tile set. And I gotta say, that's the new movement system. The old system, there were definitely, I don't really want to call them exploits because they really weren't, but like doing the little slide front flip jump thing was what everybody did because it was the fastest. But I personally, I like the older system better because it made you can take the superhero aspect a little too far, and that's why I never really liked the Superman character in the comic books, because if your dude's too powerful or has too many, just advantages, the challenge goes out of it and it loses some of its fun. And they have this beautiful tile set that they've spent countless hours making just look awesome, and they were like, you know what, we're just gonna make it so you can fly over the whole fucking thing.
Zip straight through that thing.
Yeah,
you can launch yourself across an entire chasm. Like, you can jump entire sections of the map with this super jump. It's ridiculous.
Well, so I gotta say, before you move further with that point, there has been a couple opportunities where it's been really super cool to just be able to jump so far up in the air, and like you just feel like a superhero and a ninja at the same time, where it's like, instead of looking for the staircase and being like, oh, I'm just gonna take the stairs, the elevator, and you just like I gotta get up there, bam, it's done.
Well, I mean,
you just
I don't want to
start chopping into people.
I don't want to say like there's no point to it or that's not occasionally cool, but I feel like maybe having different level effects would have been better. Like, you know, maybe instead of the gravity being the same on all things, just have, if you want your guys to be able to jump around on some level, say lower gravity, and then, you know, you can do all kinds of extra shit. But, you know, to me, it's kind of like, I've argued for years that the biggest sin World of Warcraft ever made was putting in flying mounts. Because someone spent time crafting all of this level, and you just fly over it, and it has no more import.
That's close to my heart, man.
I know. I was sad. I mean, everyone was like, oh man, flying mounts are awesome. I got sad because you could just get on a mount, fly straight up from Stormwind, and just go straight out to wherever your quest was and never have to see anything or deal with anything or interact with anything.
Experience any of that content.
Yeah,
Yep,
and I feel like
everything.
I feel like the current way Warframe moves, it's not quite that bad because there is still limitations, but I feel like the older version of it was better than what we've got now.
Mind the newer version if it limited the distance a bit. I don't mind jumping through the air or even being able to jump super high. It's how far out you can go that's really the problem, because you can skip an entire section of map, and this game is beautiful and you don't want to skip that because it's beautiful. I mean, who doesn't want to look down a massive chasm and just be able to see the snowflakes slowly drifting down it and like see water at the bottom? Like, it's just the coolest thing in this game. The environments are just great.
So I feel like this is probably a pretty good point. I gotta ask, what do you guys feel like you would like to see different about this game in general, or specifically?
I have to say that the two things that I would really like to see more than anything else is going back to the old movement system and having more of an open world, like truly open world MMO style area or missions for you to do in the world, rather than just being a bunch of instanced levels. I understand why they did that with the tile set, but like they put in those stations where you could go in as a player and kind of tromp around with other people. I think that was a great start, but I think they need to expand on that.
I'll definitely agree with that. I've got that written down specifically. I would love to see more situations where generally this game is, it doesn't always feel like it, but generally this game is following a hallway. You've got a very linear path, and there's like a couple deviations, but there's not really, even those deviations don't ultimately lead to your goal. You can't really take an alternate path. They do a great job of blending it into like the whole environment. Like, obviously this is just like a storage area in a ship or something like that. But generally speaking, there's not a way for you to go like, well, I'm going to go this way and you can go that way and we'll meet over here. It's like, I would love to see more of, they've got a very diverse set of like, here's planet set tiles, here's ship based tiles and things along those lines. I would love to see some of the planet based areas be less of a tile, and obviously I know there would be tons of work that goes into this, but have just sort of a compound that we can move around. If you're going to add this badass new movement system where I can fly forever or whatever, like, give me some walls to scale, give me some barracks to avoid, give me pieces that lend to that, to being able to like wrap your head around that kind of advanced movement system where you can chain together all these different pieces and go for such a long period of time.
I think I wouldn't mind keeping the tile system the way it is now, but if they were even just to add some new missions, like, and just call them like siege missions, where you have to go in and literally scale a castle or a fortress or a Grenier fortress or get inside of a crashed ship and get in that way, where you have to jump like that and move around in an open world kind of environment.
I'm sorry, I do have to pause you a little bit. We have not experienced the 10-man content. There is some, I guess, raid-esque content to this game. And we've not been presented the opportunity to be able to participate in that yet.
Well, that kind of harkens back to one of my earlier arguments in that the game doesn't do a particularly good job of explaining things to you, because I would say that we're veteran players. I mean, yeah, we're kind of coming back into it, so we're relearning some of the stuff has changed between when we played last and now. But I go in there now and I look at my mission board, and I have like 30 missions. and I'm like, I have no idea what any of this is for and what's going to get me to someplace cool.
Right. And like even the questing system, I feel like the quests, I don't know, they kind of lose value over time because you get a bunch of different ones, and you kind of lose track of the storyline. I don't feel like there's a clear storyline anymore because there's 4 different quest lines that you have to follow, or you don't have to, but there's 4 different quest lines to follow, but none of them really interlock with each other or really complete one central story. It's very open-ended, which is a good thing because you can go in and pick the missions that you want to do, but it's almost too open-ended in that you don't have to follow these quest lines and there's no penalty for not doing them, so there's no story.
Well, the quests aren't particularly interesting because they're either A, short-lived, or they're just a targeted grind. For example, I've got on my palette right now, I've got the Jordis Precept. I did 1 quest before I got to the point that I'm at now, and the point that I'm at now is harvest Fairlick pods from Juggernauts. All that is going out to a specific planet, running relatively the same missions over and over, and hoping that I proc a rare spawn that pops up and I kill it, and even then I hope that I get a specific piece off of him. So there's as much as I agree with this game as a free-to-play game, and I like it does so many things right in my mind. There's so many grind walls that are just ridiculous. Joe, you and I both went through the Hydroid grind wall. And got that character, and we're like, oh, this is such a piece of shit afterwards. Like,
the coolest part about that was turning into Pepto-Bismol on the floor. But that's a good segue into our final segment here because we're kind of running out of time for what we've got on this.
Yeah.
So, Thor, is Warframe worth the investment of time and or money?
Absolutely. Even if you don't end up buying platinum and buying all your frames, which you shouldn't do because it's really worth the grind, it is definitely worth your time in that you will have a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced. You won't get bored. You will not get bored playing this game. There's just so much content to it, and it looks amazing. I feel like,
anyways.
Yeah. You'll have to grind, and it's going to be a hard grind, but you'll probably have fun doing it because of the procedural generation and just the varying options that you have at your disposal.
What do you think, Hoover?
I mean, we didn't even get into dojos and PvP and all that. There's so much to do, and it's a free game. Not only is it a free game for PC, it's a free game for PlayStation 4. I'm not sure if it's available for Xbox as well, but there's so much to do. I like I said at the beginning of the video, I have 200 hours into this game, and I mean, like, obviously that indicates it's worth the investment of time. And I mean, like, if I had a little bit of disposable income, whoo, that Valben Prime looks so nice right now. Like, I would pick that up. They do such a good job with the art. They do such a good job with the environments. It's I mean, especially considering you're investing nothing to even give it a try, man. Totally.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'd say the Warframe is definitely one of those games that most people should pick up if they're into kind of fast-paced shooters. I realize kind of fast-paced arcadey stuff may not necessarily appeal to everyone, but I think it's definitely a game everyone should at least give a try because it's free. So if you don't like it, you're just out the time that you spent downloading it and playing it, and then the time it takes you to uninstall it. I do think that I'm kind of the opinion that if you want to fast track it, it's definitely worth the money to spend on the platinum, but it's definitely not required that you do that. So I have to say it is definitely worth it.
Definitely not behind the paywall.
Yeah. So I think that wraps it about up. We're kind of got a little overtime here, but that's okay.
You know what that means. If you like it, you know what to do, so do it. And we will see you next to the magical fun time. Oh, you
I figured it out. Done being done.
Be done being done.
Oh my gosh!
Robotic signature detected. Lock and load.
No, you've actually screwed me. I Do you realize what you've done? I just fell out of the map. I watched the entire map disappear into blackness before respawning down here at the bottom of the elevator.